Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV Top Gun Sales and Marketing channel. Now, I try to maintain a fair and balanced view when approaching any interview, but I have to admit, when I saw the brief today about my guest, I did say to myself, brilliant and about time too. Pimento is the UK's leading independent agency network. Its aim is to deliver virtual marketing services, simplify the lives of marketers, and solve challenges for its clients. Now, Pimento says it can deliver scale, breadth of expertise, and the new ideas needed to match any brief without the overheads that burden the traditional networked agencies. Now, that's great. But what excites me about talking to my guest today, the founder of Pimento, is that I see it as a client-driven operation. In other words, client first, agency second. Your results as a client before the agency winning their awards. I'm hoping I've read that correctly, but let's find out as we say hello to CEO and founder of Pimento, Stephen Knight. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, Malcolm.
It's delighted. Listen, I did took a side look and I looked up what the word pimento is, and it's a very versatile fruit, isn't it, or pepper?
It is indeed. Yeah, it's a hot chili pepper, and you can put it in most things. It's an ingredient that you can put into both desserts and as well as main courses, and you can even actually gnaw on one.
Yeah, right.
If you like the hot stuff.
Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, I've got to. I live in the cold north. Anything to heat us up, Stephen, I'm delighted that you're kindly solo guesting on the BBTV Top Gun Sales and Marketing channel. And I'm keen to hear more about Pimento from a client side. Viewers and listeners, in this BBTV talk, I'll be chatting to Stephen in my typical format of 3 parts. First, I'll ask him to tell us about the world of virtual agency services, how it works, and what Pimento does, and the value of such a service. In part 2, we move to talking about the changing world of the way of working of UK media workforce, and what that means for clients and existing agencies. And in part 3, we'll talk about how he sees the change continuing and what that means for marketing and what clients should be thinking, asking, and doing. Stephen, before we get into our 3-part chat, can you please briefly introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Stephen Knight and what prompted you to start Pimento?
So Stephen Knight is a marketeer. Originally, I came from the world of advertising. I spent my formative years working in advertising agencies in London, and then moved client side to work for the Walt Disney Company, initially as a head of brand, and then eventually I became the CMO for Europe, Middle East and Africa, working across all their business divisions. And then rounded up my career agency side, this time, as we used to call it, below the line, and worked for a large global promotions agency that looked after people like McDonald's, etc., with their promotional design and manufacturing of their premiums. And then in 2005, I set up Pimento. And the reason for its existence really came out of my time when I was at Disney. We had lots of fantastic agencies that we worked with right across our businesses, and we were quite a siloed organization with lots of operating divisions. But each of those businesses had pretty much carte blanche to actually work with whomever they wanted, wherever they wanted. Net result of which is that we didn't have any consistency, and nor did we have an integrated approach to our communications and marketing. It tended to be really by the loudest voice or where the money was being spent, rather than necessarily looking at it from the customer point of view and thinking about how we could actually create more unified, more integrated communications to be more effective. Now, it was at a time when comms was basically getting specialized and we were seeing a breakdown of the full service agency model. And agencies obviously had a vested interest in protecting their overhead and protecting what they did. And therefore, the agency from the advertising agency, advertising as a solution, direct marketing agency may well turn around and say it was all about direct communications and so on and so forth. I felt there had to be a better model, a way in which clients could actually get better, clearer, objective advice and help on actually their marketing requirements. And that's how Pimento was born. I decided to work purely with independent agencies because in my experience, they frankly work harder and more committed to their client's business. It's in their personal interest to be successful for their clients because it's their bottom line. And they play, frankly, much nicer in the sandpit with other independent agencies. They recognise the value in collaboration. So very early doors, we put together bespoke teams. We orientated ourselves around the client business objective. We're always business first, focused on how could marketing enable their growth? What did marketing do to create a solution for their particular business challenge? And we orientated ourselves around a collective thought with a team that was bespoke in nature, with the relevant disciplines pulled together into a single team on behalf of that client. And guess what? We got some momentum. Clients liked the fact that we were often more senior than a lot of the agencies they've been used to engaging with. I mean, you heard the old adage about the fact that when the client hires the PR agency and they meet the team on the pitch, and very quickly they recognise that the team on the pitch isn't the team that's on their business. And I think for clients that's quite distressing and quite irritating. So we've always believed that the people who work on pitches are the people who are on your team. We ever put forward people who, frankly, have the capacity and intellect and experience within the category. And that's also very important to drive your new business growth. So what's the plan? And it's sort of snowballed from there, really.
Brilliant. Now, and I very much take what you were saying about the client, the amount of procurement and buyers that we interview across the year, always come up with, they send a team in and we never see them again. And, they don't take enough time. We say to them, do you want to win business or do you want to win our business? And there's I really applaud you where you're going there. Let's kick off our chat in part one. Tell us about the world of virtual agency services, how it works and what Pimento does and the value of such a service, both to independent agencies and especially to clients.
Okay, so the makeup of a virtual agency isn't really distinctly different from a makeup of a group, be it WPP or Omnicom or any of the other international global groups. We're a membership organisation with some 200 independent agencies, about 5,500 people, and we cover just under 100 different marketing disciplines. So to that extent, it's not dissimilar. I suppose what is different is that the agencies that we're working with are, on the whole, significantly smaller. They're typically about 50 odd people in size. They are, as I say, owner-driven and run by very often the owners and founders of the businesses still. It could be second-generation management. And they are motivated by different things than what you would typically find within a WPP or an Omnicom agency, where, just at the point that actually members become corporate in nature and start to, frankly, take on the mantle of the groups, that point that we as a network, we start to say, actually, it's no longer right for us, it's no longer right for our client base. But we're only really interested in growth companies that are actually orientated around clients and focused on delivering services for those clients. Largest agency in our network would be about 300 people. The smallest would be, a consultants of 1 or 2 people. So there's huge variety. A lot of these people don't have permanent offices. A lot of them, if they did have permanent offices prior to COVID, perhaps we considered that. And a lot of them obviously work from home or they work from clubs. And what we encourage our members to do is obviously keep their overheads low, so they're flexible, and to focus on the quality of the services they deliver. Gone are the days when clients expected plush, flash West End offices with legions and legions of, account people and massive reception areas and so on and so forth. Those days are gone. And I think that, we found in the 16 years we've been operating that clients have an expectation that if we are traveling anywhere, we're traveling to them. They don't much care where you are delivering your services from. They're much more focused on the quality of the people and the services you're delivering. And as we see in COVID, that model's been proven. We have people working with us, not just in the UK, but overseas. We have an agency down in Australia, an agency in North America. And all of those are very comfortable in actually orientating themselves around the client and providing their services regardless of time zones. And you know what? I think this is going to be a trend that's going to continue. We've seen, since we started 16 years ago, the rise of virtual agency networks and collectives. There are a number of them out there now. And it's working well for clients. That they like it because they're getting a full service proposition. And a lot of the frustration I felt as a client myself and in clients that I've spoken to over the years is that their marketing departments had to grow and enlarge in order to be able to actually manage the agencies themselves.
See, I see it more than just a cost saving, which would be the automatic first reaction. I see it more as a, let's call it, diversity of access to creativity that you are able to bring, particularly as, you know, a lot of brands are now looking to global opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's diverse by its very nature. I mean, we have agencies right across the UK. There's a number of agencies now in Scotland, as well as agencies in Bristol, Bath, and the West Country, and Norwich, and London. You know, all the major conurbations across the UK, and therefore, by very inference, it is diverse. That said, there's always room, I think, for more diversity in communications in general. I do think agencies have traditionally been far too middle class, far too peopled by, certainly in senior positions, by men. But I do believe that actually things are changing, and they're changing rapidly, and they need to. It's, you know, you need to represent your consumer. You need to have diverse opinions and thought. You need to have people who have a different point of view. Otherwise, the output is the same and won't satisfy brands. It doesn't satisfy consumers, and life has to evolve and reflect society. And I don't think communications as an industry has always done that. Partly because, you know, a lot of people haven't been aware that actually there is an industry out there.
Yeah,
there is an educational issue, I think, at grassroots, that, you know, the colleges, the schools, etc., don't promote marketing and communications in the same way as they do sciences or accountancy or finance or legal. You know, it's not seen as an industry. It's not perceived to be something that one can have a career in the same way.
Well, another thing I'm getting very clear from Pimento is your agility and adaptability. I mean, speed is of the essence now, and it will continue to be so as we enter into this altered world. You're meeting new challenges fast. The old traditional ship that's taken, you know, miles to turn won't be the one that succeeds. So that's why I say, am I correct in thinking that or not?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, agencies have pulled the wool over clients' eyes for decades. You know, it amuses me in my days in advertising how producing a television commercial could take anywhere between 6 and 12 months from brief through to execution.
Yeah.
Deliberately slow because it suited the agencies to be like that, and it meant they could build in more margin. Clients are wised up to that, and we saw in the 90s and then the turn of the century and more recently a breakdown in agency structures, and clients and procurement departments in particular recognizing actually if you disintermediate and actually look at the component parts, you can get greater value. Agencies got found out. They got found out in production. They got found out on media. They've been found out on agency group deals. I mean, there's been all a catalogue of them, so I won't bore you with all of that. But independent agencies aren't hampered by those same requirements. They're not answerable to shareholders. They don't have to, you know, on a quarterly basis report in, and therefore growth for them is about doing a great job, delivering value for their clients. And guess what? You know, they're rewarded by more clients, more spend, etc., etc. So, you know,
it's a simple formula. It's a simple formula.
It is a simple formula. You keep your clients happy, and guess what? You know, they spend more money because their business is doing well.
Yeah, do it. Right.
And the problem was that because the advertising market in particular became so competitive, agencies cut their own throats. They reduced their margins in order to be able to compete with other agencies to reduce their margins. And then what you found was that all through margin erosion, two things happened. First of all, the quality of the people in the industry suffered.
Yeah.
Left because they weren't being paid enough, and they all went into management consultancy and elsewhere. And agencies had to then make up the margins they were giving away on their fees. And they sought ways to do that, which were frankly not criminal, but frankly, at the very least, immoral. And guess what? They were turning out, you know, 15 to 20% gross margin, and they were paying. Their client was paying them 5%. So how do they get to that 20%? Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but that's the fact of where we got to, and I think we have to. We're starting again. We're seeing it with the groups at the moment. They're failing. WPP announced 2.4 billion loss last week.
Not that Martin Sorrell will worry about that. That's
no,
not his worry now.
He's well out of it now, isn't he?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and doing very nicely. Interesting in an independent agency.
yeah.
And Havas, Publicis, and others all having very difficult times, and that's because they're having to reorientate themselves around their clients. They're having to shed people very, very rapidly. They're having to pull their brands and basically close down businesses and merge businesses. And we've seen it's quite interesting actually, because we spend our life advising our clients on brand management, yet there's been an appalling lack of brand management. Yeah. Some of these groups have got about closing wonderful brands like JWT and others, and there's numerous brands that have basically disappeared rather than actually taking the opportunity to reposition themselves and represent themselves to their clients. And that's because they've had to be expedient. They've had to cut their costs rapidly in order that they can stay in business and in order to keep the banks happy.
Yeah.
And they're just so internally focused because they have to be, because they're answerable to shareholders. Meantime, independent agencies have, guess what, focused on their clients.
Yeah.
Restructured. They've had to make cuts too. They've had to furlough people. They've had to reduce their overheads wherever possible. But touch wood, every single one of our agencies that went into COVID is still trading, and some have done very, very well in this period.
Yeah, totally. I met quite a few that have done really well, and they're emerging very, very much stronger. Stephen, before we move to part two, I'd like to remind viewers and listeners of your website, which is very easy to remember. This one, everybody, all the W's, of course, Pimento. And I'll read that out for listeners. Pimento is Pimento, pimento.co.uk. Stephen, part two. Let's move to talking about the changing world of the way of working of the UK media workforce and what that means for clients and existing agencies. Now, I know that, and I've read the exciting service that you brought out called Momento People. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. But being different in the marketplace, stimulating customer action, keeping ahead of the digital marketing game, these are all client-side challenges that need to be met, aren't they? So is it not just safe to stay with one supposedly full-service agency?
I don't think you can, unfortunately, because I don't think any single agency has all the answers. And every agency is absolutely brilliant in certain things and average in other areas. And we do have full service agencies within the network who are very good, but by their own admission, they can't do everything. And therefore, the model we have works well in supporting those agencies that maybe have 75% of the offer in one place, but very often they'll come to us to be able to extend that proposition in order to be able to flesh out their proposition to their clients. So that's, for a lot of people joining Pimento, they join because they want to be part of a network. They want to be able to extend their proposition to their clients. They want their clients to be stickier. And, and one of the ways of doing that obviously is to ensure that they've actually got good people and good services and can actually offer them a broad range of services. But equally too, that they learn from each other, and we're always learning. It's constant learning. And you just think about actually how digital continues to evolve. The latest announcements with regarding to cookies and conversations with Google. I think it was 3 weeks ago, we had Mark Howell, who's the managing director of Google EMEA, on one of our shows, and he was talking about the impact on post-cookie world. And just as we saw with GDPR, clients are only now just coming to terms with the implications around their data and what they'll be able to do. And that will change immeasurably their approach to digital marketing, both performance marketing and social. We've also seen a staggering increase in social during COVID and its impact on marketing communications. We've seen of new platforms, TikTok, has been an interesting. Clubhouse, the very latest one.
Yep.
That will follow, and that all requires evaluation. It requires a perspective, and it requires an approach. And CMO, Paul, I feel sorry for that, because the CMO has to have a point of view on all of this. They have to be answerable to their board. Typically the chairman comes in on Monday and says, my son spent the weekend on whatever platform it was. Tell me, why aren't we on that? And you hear this all the time. It's apocryphal, but it's true. So marketing really needs to keep abreast of the latest innovations in technology. It needs to be constantly challenging itself to ensure that it's actually delivering what it sets out to deliver.
Yeah.
Have a whole generation of people who are digital natives, who've grown up in the digital world and know little or nothing about traditional media. There's still a significant role for traditional media, both in brand building as well as in direct sales. We're seeing lots of digital agencies now going out and acquiring traditional media planning and buying agencies because they just don't have enough knowledge in that space. And they do recognize that actually you need a balanced portfolio in your channels. There's still a role for television, there's still a role for outdoor, there's still a role for radio, there's still a role for print, but that needs to be married to all of the social channels and to all of the other digital channels. And SEO continues to be absolutely essential. It's a day in, day out battle, as clients know. And there are models where clients are insourcing. At the moment, I think there's more of a trend to outsourcing again, as clients having to cut their overheads and having to trim their teams. They're looking to now outsource to agencies again. So it changes all the time. And keeping abreast of that change and giving best advice. It's very, very difficult to do that if your model doesn't allow you to do it. If your model is a defensive model and is actually actively selling the services that you offer, not necessarily looking at the client and thinking actually what is right for you and then creating resources around that client, then you're never going to get the truth. You never actually have the most effective marketing that you might have.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. You're going to be behind the curve, not in front of the curve, aren't you? But just talking about a couple of extra things about the workforce and how you manage these people remotely. Now, I work with a lot of digital marketing people, particularly on helping them win new contracts and leadership and things like that. And it's like herding cats at times. Getting them to understand deadlines and so on like that. How do you manage that remotely to bring everything together?
Well, yes, it's never easy. And I think that the truth of it is it comes through two things: force of personality and technology. If you've got a common aim and it's no different to building a team within an agency, you're just doing it in a remote fashion. We manage all our projects in the same way as most agencies would. So everything is basically managed through Google or through Dropbox, so everyone has common access to the same information. We use project management tools like Trello and others in order to be able to mark progress. We don't overburden either our clients or the agencies with too much process, because you still want that room for creativity and spontaneity, and at the same time, you want to make sure there's accountability and that people are delivering what they're supposed to deliver on time. Every single project we work on has a single person who's ultimately responsible for managing that resource. So in the same way, in a traditional agency model, it could be an account director, it could be a producer, it could be a creative, whoever that person is. They're the key and person who's accountable and responsible for the services that we are supporting our clients with. The client has that single point of contact. So in the same way as they will with a bricks and mortar agency, there's somebody who is their account lead, if you like. That's no different. And we're fortunate. We've got about 30 of those individuals. A lot of them are account planners, former managing directors of advertising agencies, direct marketing agencies. I mean, they're all pretty senior people, and they're used to managing large groups of people. Some of them, I'll be honest with you, prefer running things very tight, and it's not always necessary to have big teams. Sometimes, we might work on a project where there's only 2 or 3 people involved. Last year, we did a project, we had 17 different agencies working on it, where we were responsible from the actual proposition, pricing, literally right back to proposition pricing, all the way through to managing a call center. So everything in between, from brand development to brand identity creation, advertising, media planning and buying, digital marketing, social media, PR. Every aspect was outsourced to us as a virtual marketing department.
Oh.
And that was fun. I loved doing that.
Yeah. That's what a terrific case study. And just before we move to part 3, can I just ask you about Momento People? What is it, and who should be applying to be part of it?
Momento People was a business that we set up about 18 months ago in recognition for the fact that actually the world of working was changing rapidly. And the thinking at the time was evidenced by some research we've done in the US, where up to 57% of all the people who work in agencies in New York are freelancers. They're working for themselves. They're either on short-term contracts or interim contracts or day rates, whatever it happens to be. But agencies in the US have recognized that in order to be able to actually, frankly, manage their overhead, they can only afford to employ a certain percentage. The rest has to be specialists who they bring in on an as-need basis. Historically, the freelance market in the UK has been, frankly, older people who've got to a stage in their career where they find it difficult to get employment in agencies. They either become too expensive or they get to a point in their careers where they elect to work for themselves and go into freelancing. That's no longer the case. I mean, we've got school leavers, graduates, people who've been in the business 4 or 5 years electing to basically go into the freelance business as a lifestyle choice. And they want to be able to work X number of days a week and to be able to travel and do those other things they want to do in their lives. So with this explosion in freelancing, we thought, well, actually, there's an opportunity to ensure 2 things. First of all, that freelancers are looked after correctly. I mean, we've all heard the stories of the freelancers, the creative director tipping up on a Monday morning and spending 6 hours in reception before anyone bothered to go down and actually welcome them into the office and show them an office and give them a brief. And then we also recognise that agencies typically, and we're seeing this a lot at the moment, go through boom to bust in terms of their overhead. They get to a situation where they're either carrying too many people, they lose a major piece of business, and the only way they can react is to let people go. At a point, very often, it tends to be the last in, first out, or it tends to be a lot of younger people. And for that reason, we put together a proposition called Loan Scheme. And the Loan Scheme essentially is you basically loan out talent to third-party agencies, often in competing or non-competing areas. That talent gets the opportunity to work in a different environment, get different sets of experiences for a period of time, a bit like a professional football player, out on loan. And say after 3 months or 6 months, whatever the period is, things pick up and they can come back to the mothership, as it were. Or you can agree an extension, go into overtime. Or if you want, sticking with a football analogy, you can agree a transfer fee. First of all, it gives you a better option than making somebody redundant. You'll cover anywhere between 75% and 90% of their cost. They come back and infuse your agency with new talents, new skills, new experiences. And that's important, particularly now we move into what I call a more T-shaped marketing society. By that I mean, single discipline, is not going to change for the foreseeable future. But what we want is creative people, advertising people, marketing people, account people, strategists, creatives, etc., who are more T-shaped. And by that, what I mean is they've got experience across disciplines. They understand the role of PR. They understand how direct marketing works, how digital works, how advertising works, etc., etc. And in order to do that, they need to get experience somewhere. So, and again, this comes back to the Pimento model, and a very good reason why people join Pimento is because they like the soft education that comes with what we do. We put on last year 350 events across the year. We responded to COVID very rapidly and put together a network of professional service advisors to support our members, accountants, lawyers, M&A specialists, procurement specialists, and so on. But at the heart of what we were trying to do was to keep the community engaged and working together. And that's for many of our members, that's why they join us. Regardless, it's about feeling part of something larger.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. That exceptionally good. By the way, you can see this, ladies and gentlemen. Just go to pimentopeople.com, pimentopeople.com, and that's the PDF that you can download that will give you the info. And I do like Stephen's analogy regarding the football loan scheme. It's an easy one to understand. Pimentopeople.com. Thanks, Stephen. Now for part 3. And it's Stephen's virtual crystal ball time. There must be a game in that, a game show in there, shouldn't there? Surely. Let's talk about let's talk about how you see the present change continuing and what that means for marketing effectiveness, efficiency, and spend. What should clients be thinking, asking, and doing about their marketing planning and spending now?
Well, the answer to that question is it entirely depends upon where they are in their business cycle and what their business objectives are. But I mean, I suppose what is true of all clients is data. Data is very much at the heart of marketing. It's become a science as much as an art.
Yeah.
Seen with Sorrel and Media Monks and other organisations and all of the digital players, really focused on managing your data pool, really understanding how you segment it and you target it, using the tools that are available to you, particularly with outbound communications, email marketing, and so on and so forth. So data is number one. Secondly, channel planning, marrying up those channels, really understanding the effectiveness or otherwise of those channels. Nothing new in that. But again, the role of those channels are changing and evolving, and different audiences are engaging at different points in that funnel through different channels. Third point, I guess, is there is still absolutely a role for creativity. Everyone kind of is so focused on the database and the channel that they kind of forget actually the basics of marketing haven't really changed, and that's having a really relevant proposition that's differentiated, that's powerful, a story that's well told. That's incredibly important, and that will continue to be so. Brand. We lose sight of the fact that actually merely by actually building something, people, they will come. If you take any of the commoditization of sectors like travel, you look at commoditization in channels like energy, whatever, people are buying on two things. They're buying on price, but they're equally buying on brand. And there's still a role for brand, even in commoditized marketplaces. And brand marketeers, must continue to beat the drum, must continue to get budget for investment in brand, because that will be the differentiator in a market where product parity is there. It will continue to be the case.
Yeah. And do you really think, by the way, that marketing reputation management should be part of marketing and brand management?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and brands, have to recognise that it takes years and years to build a brand, but it can be trashed overnight.
Yes, yeah.
For a series of poor tweets.
Yeah.
And it's also true of personal brands. It's no different. We look at some of our personalities and some of the news items the last week or so. These people are actually managing their personal brand, using both broadcast media and social media to actually orientate positive and negative thoughts around them. And they are being well advised in the background by professionals who are helping them to position themselves correctly. So absolutely, the tools are slightly different, but you need to be able to actually use all of them. And whether it's reputational management on FIFO scales, whether it's Google rankings, whether it's positive or negative tweets about your business, that stuff has to be managed, and it needs ultimately to reside with the CMO. He or she has responsibility, and it's all about creating and cultivating that brand and making sure that every touch point there is consistency. And the touch points, unfortunately, are just getting broader.
Yeah. And do you think, again, there, just extending that slightly, that marketing results and measurement should start to become part of the board meeting? The board looks at financial figures behind the screen, the rear view mirror, but doesn't bring in the things like reputation management, where we are in the marketplace, what people think about us. Those sort of things should be part of the governance of a business, I think. What do you?
Totally agree. Absolutely agree. And I think it's interesting now that in the past, the role of advisors to the boards, used to be more focused around legal advice, making sure that you had a strong legal team around you. It used to be very, very focused on obviously financial advice and make sure you've got financial advisors. But increasingly, what we are seeing is both boards, CEOs, etc., having very, very strong communication and PR advisory people around them, either within their organizations or externally, helping them to manage their brand, both their personal brand as well as their business's brand. And it's also very interesting if you think about this, the CEOs of organizations these days, at the very best, are fantastic communicators. They're absolutely brilliant at actually landing their message. In the past, it was not as important thing. Hiring talent, it was a nice to have rather than a must have.
Yeah.
And 250 these days will actually hire a chief executive that doesn't have fantastic interpersonal skills and great communication skills. But they do need external advisors. And the reason why they need external advisors is that most boards can become very insular, very inward facing. And that's the point of marketing too, is to continue to represent the customer at our boardroom table, to continue to ensure that actually the board is looking out and not focusing too much inward. And the fifth change that we are seeing is to do with accountability and measurement.
Yeah.
We all talk about full funnel attribution and the ability to be able to actually measure the impact of every part of the marketing mix. There are still massive holes in the ability to be able to actually drill down and genuinely to be able to demonstrate the impact that certain channels and certain messages have on performance. And therefore, what we are witnessing is a lot of digital natives and a lot of digital agencies basically focusing on the stuff that can be measured, and unfortunately excluding the stuff that sometimes is more difficult to measure because it's expedient. Nonetheless, there is a massive role for it, particularly in brand building. And the more that we look at investment in communications as an investment rather than a cost, then the more likelihood is that you'll get boards to appreciate that actually what we're trying to do here is add value to the wealth of the company, add value to the reputation of a company, and ensure that as that company goes forward, that value is recognized on the balance sheet. And obviously that value is recognized in terms of sales, market share, reputation, and so on and so forth. But you can one without the other. You can spend all your money at the bottom end of the funnel, on performance marketing. And increasingly that's expensive, and it will have little effect in the absence of having some sort of brand or some sort of strong proposition in the marketplace.
Yeah, I've been working with a number of CEOs now who are asking really sensible questions about marketing. They're going past the vanity numbers that marketing used to be able to be offering, and they're now starting to say, well, what's the real story that we're looking for? By the way, one other little question I just want to sneak in before we say goodbye to you is conscious marketing. I spend a lot of our time on these interviews at BVTV in America, and a lot of the big brands there are very much focused upon the conscious agenda, Planet People Profits there, but looking very much to how their marketing is becoming conscious in its approach, particularly on its usage, say, of print and so on. Are you finding that change happening in the UK yet?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, brands, no self-respecting brand today cannot afford not to be able to articulate its purpose, its impact, its environmental impact. Equally too, we witnessed last year that a number of brands felt that merely by basically going to social media and supporting certain actions, be it Black Lives Matters or some of the environmental lobbying groups, etc., supporting those. If you don't have a point of view, if you can't demonstrate you're actively doing something about it, then you should not be looking to jump on the back of that bandwagon. Stay away from it until you actually can demonstrate you're adding value. As we saw, the greenwash brigade, for sustainability, and coming out with we're doing this, etc. doesn't take much these days in the world of social media to probe organizations and find out very quickly that actually what they're saying isn't what they're doing. And therefore, if you are going to make a statement, make sure you can support it. That said, all businesses, however mature they are, whether they're startups or global multinationals, have a responsibility to the environment, have a responsibility to respect diversity, and have responsibility to the impact they create on environments. And increasingly, both at the annual general meetings and the annual reports, we are already seeing, obviously, clear statements about the business impact on each of those areas and what organizations are doing about it. And guess what? The valuations for those organizations will over time become more valuable than those organizations that are doing nothing about it. So it makes commercial sense, but it makes, most importantly, humanitarian sense. And all of us have that responsibility.
Brilliant. I love the world of marketing. It's been my life for well over 40 years. And so I've experienced its evolution, but nothing so fast as what's happening today and what awaits tomorrow. I trust, like me, this interview with Stephen Knight of Pimento has given you pause for thought, whether you're an agency or a client. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed, and have a great day.